you hear me? Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Geoff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, and I am sitting here on another busy, as it turns out, Monday afternoon of conference realignment news and all kinds of other good, fun stuff. We are meeting as we usually do on Monday afternoons with Sean Reider, my colleague from the Journal, who is the major or the primary football beat writer for the Journal, and as he covered Bronco Mendenhall's press conference today at noon for a big week for Lobo football. Frankly, a really big week for Lobo football. They play at New Mexico State this Saturday in Las Cruces. A bunch of news is starting to sort of come down the pipe and hit us. So conference realignment news. And I see Sean's video is skipping out on us now, and he may have to rejoin us. We will see here. Let me remove that one and add this one. And Sean, welcome. Can you hear me and everything good?
My connection is insanely bad. I'm not entirely sure what is going on, and I don't know if you can hear me all that great, but let's try and make it work. Geoff, thank you for having me on a very sleepy Monday afternoon in which there are no football games of consequence for the University of New Mexico this week, and nothing going on in college football in general today.
Let's we'll cover the bases real briefly on football, and then we'll get back to football later. The big news on Lobo football right now is obviously they are 0-4. They lost on Saturday to Fresno State in a game that I said Saturday night in the post-game show was sort of my first time sort of being disappointed in how they performed. I thought in their first 3 games, despite losses, they showed a lot to me. It isn't as though they showed nothing on Saturday against Fresno State. I thought the offense was still good and showed that it can score some points on some good teams. But overall, I just was a little unimpressed. But those 4 games are very different from the rest of their season, including the next stretch of games. And that starts this weekend with New Mexico State, that is not a very good football team this year, not like the last 2 years when they beat UNM in this rivalry game and went to bowl games. Sean, what say you about the general kind of overall place that UNM football is in right now heading into this rivalry game?
Yeah, with the caveat that my connection's still terrible and I can't really understand what you're saying to a certain point. Yeah, obviously it's a huge game, right? 0-4 New Mexico at this point, 1-3 for New Mexico State at this point as well. And Bronco Mendenhall in his press conference talk today, it was kind of interesting in the sense that he is a guy that if you ask him stuff about, certain memories of playing certain teams or, for him to kind of go back on previous experiences, he really doesn't say a lot on that in press conferences. And he didn't really do that today when talking about New Mexico State. I kind of asked him, really twice, like, do you have any good memories or anything you remember in particular from when you were introduced to the New Mexico State rivalry, when you were here, when he was there from 1998 to 2002 before leaving to be the DC at BYU. And he frankly just flat out said that he has no memories come to mind. It was actually kind of funny in that sense that, you're living in this and coaching in this rivalry and nothing really jogged him. Nothing really stood out to him in that sense. But clearly, it's a game of consequence. I haven't listened to what Tony Sanchez has said. I believe his press conference is just about done by this point. But Mendenhall basically, similar stuff than what you've heard in the past, in the sense that they're focused on themselves, and the rivalry means a lot to people in the state and all that. But they're still going to have that approach of we're going to focus on ourselves, focus on what we need to take care of in terms of clean up mistakes on both sides of the ball, especially with penalties and the like, and just kind of moving forward on that note.
All right, we're going to revisit football. Obviously, that is the main point of our Monday afternoon shows, and we'll talk about depth chart. We'll talk about what Bronco said at his press conference, and all that good stuff. But right now, I want to update you a little bit, update everybody on conference realignment. Sean's still working on his connection a little bit, so I don't know if he's gonna rejoin you. Sean, if you want to hop out and rejoin us, if that helps. If not, don't worry about it. I'm going to be rambling a little bit about updating people where we're at on conference realignment news of the day. Can you hear me, Sean?
Yeah, you're talking about. Yeah, again, my connection is terrible. I don't know what's going on.
All right, I'm sending you a message while I ramble here. So the conference realignment news of the day is this: the AAC4, basically by AAC4 I mean Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, and UTSA, UT San Antonio, were presented this morning. Apparently, they had, or over the weekend maybe, all the final offers, all the terms of what they would be getting if they joined the Pac 2+4. The Pac 12 offer, um, they reviewed, and according to multiple national reporters, again with all this stuff that's been going on, we know the same group of 4 or 5 national reporters that keep getting all this news, essentially within a few minutes of each other, from the same sources. Uh, they all basically confirmed the same stuff, that the AAC probably wasn't, these members were not going to have their full $25 million buyouts covered by the Pac 12, and that despite the Pac 12 courting certainly Tulane and Memphis, that the 4 of them came out with a joint statement today that basically said we're staying in the AAC. So the Pac 12's first wave was, technically the first wave was Washington State and Oregon State going after the 4 Mountain West schools that they took, the Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State group. But what they did today was basically, as I tweeted, I said a swing and a miss. They did go after and offered some AAC schools in some capacity, and were told no. After that news comes out, and it didn't look great. It certainly wasn't great news for the Pac-12 in courting those teams, especially Memphis, I think was the main one. The news came out from Brent McMurphy in a tweet, who's been pretty solid on all this. I don't think Brent's been wrong about a lot of this. He came out with Brett, rather, not Brent, sorry. Came out with the tweet that said Gonzaga is accepting a role, or accepting a full share in joining the Pac-12 despite not having football. Any non-football playing school that can get a full share of conference TV money and conference revenue distribution, that's a huge get, right? And getting Gonzaga, the best team in that conference, sorry, San Diego State, would be a huge get for the Pac-12. It would be a two-headed monster in that league with Gonzaga and San Diego State, and then the next tier of Boise State and Washington State's been really good lately. Oregon State comes up and down, obviously. Colorado State would be in that next tier as well. It would be a great basketball school. There's no question about that. Fresno State is not very good in basketball, and hasn't, frankly, been for a few years now. But the reality is this: that would be a fantastic basketball league. They would still need 2 football playing members to compete at the FBS level. So there would still be additions. That said, that group of 4, 5, 6 national reporters that all seem to kind of have these stories and sources come out at the same time, other than Brett McMurphy, 4 or 5 of them came out shortly thereafter and essentially said that that's not true yet. While they're talking, and it could happen, and it still very well could happen. I'm looking at some updates now. It could still very well happen that Gonzaga joins the Pac-2+4, and but it has not happened yet. Gonzaga is saying they have not decided to join the Pac-12 at this point. So it could happen. While all that's going on, and the Gonzaga news is sort of going back and forth, and we're having source offs on Twitter or on X, Air Force news comes out. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports announces that sources have told him that Air Force has decided to stay with the Mountain West. Let me back up a step. Earlier today, I believe it was Pete Thamel that initially reported this, The Mountain West, with some of its exit fee money, remember they're getting at least 110, 111 million or so right now, based on all the exit fees of the four teams that left the Mountain West. Not only the exit fees, but there were some poaching fees that were written into the that these schools agreed to write into the bylaws just a year ago. Now they have to pay them. Um, about 110, let's call it 110, 111 million dollars at least coming the Mountain West's way that they plan to fight for, just like Washington State and Oregon State fought for when the Pac-12 tried to when it disbanded and basically said, no, we want some of that money and we're not going to pay this and that. Well, Washington State and Oregon State lost all those battles and have a nice little war chest to sit on right now because of it. The Mountain West is going to do the same and plans to hold every exiting member to the fullest letter of the bylaws, which, if that's about $111 million in exit fees right now, then they're using that money now, it sounds like. And I have talked to a couple people around the league. I don't know what the figure is. I don't know what the number is, but uh, they are offering, hey, current Mountain West members, don't go. Here's some money. We'll throw some money at you, and let's make a deal to stabilize this. Let's exist. Let's continue to exist. The Mountain West isn't going anywhere. I've maintained that from the start of all this. It won't look the same. It will be a lesser league losing those four schools, but the Mountain West isn't going anywhere. They're sitting on a ton of money. They are still out west with FBS members, and there is an inventory reality to television, which they need some Pacific time zone and some Mountain time zone football. They need some basketball games late at night. It can't all just be when it comes to football. It can't just be this pack. The right now the Pac 2+4. It can't just be that to fill all those time slots. So where we're at right now is that. Let me see if I can add Sean back in here. Where we're at now is I'll get back to the Air Force news. Ross Dellinger reported that Air Force has announced, or at least sources have told him, they plan to go nowhere, which is a good stay, I guess, for the Mountain West in the whole effort to stabilize all this, right? I think UNLV is the big play right now. Utah State and UNLV are both being courted by the Pac-12 now, and we'll see what happens with that. But Air Force alone staying is a pretty good piece of news for the Mountain West, just in that whole, it's not going anywhere. Again, it may not be the same league. It may not look the same. For all you Lobo fans that are watching, or curious onlookers in these parts, in this neck of the woods, UNM is still not in a very good spot in any of this. And as I said a week ago, it has to do with investment or lack thereof. Every bit, or if not more than success on the field for football. Remember that while Colorado State has had success head to head with UNM, Colorado State has not had a decade of success in football. They have a sub 400 winning percentage in FBS football. They have not won a bowl game. UNM has a sub 400 winning percentage in football in that stretch, has won a bowl game, but they have not invested in their field, in their facilities, and in their program nearly as much as Colorado State has. Colorado State obviously has Canvas Stadium, and that alone, sort of the investment and the obvious signs and commitment to getting better, are where Colorado State basically is sitting in a much better spot right now than is New Mexico. The market share, obviously, the Denver market share. You can debate what stranglehold the Fort Collins market has on that Denver market, but they have a piece of it. While the Albuquerque market is ranked 49th in terms of market size, there is a question about how valuable a market it is. And I've learned that in the past week, that while it is bigger than the Fresno market and some of these other markets that are in the Pac-12, the question is to advertisers, just because it's that big, it is a poor state. Has it shown a commitment to its to people who advertise in that market, that we throw a truck ad up on the air? Are we actually going to go sell trucks in that market now? And there is some question to that. So while it is a big market size, there is some question according to this Navigate spreadsheet. Navigate is the consulting firm that the Pac-12 is going by. They have a spreadsheet on Google spreadsheet that basically tells them, okay, here's what this school brings. Here's what this school brings. Here's the market that this brings and what that market really means to us and all that kind of stuff, and navigate the company that has this spreadsheet hasn't ranked UNM very high, frankly, and its market very high. So that's where we're at with all that. Air Force staying is obviously good news. Sean is back. Sean, what's your initial reaction to everything that's gone on today, which is a lot? It started with the AAC kind of seeing its initial terms, and the actual offer was on the table, and then they decided to stay together in the AAC. Then the Gonzaga news, then the reporting that the Gonzaga news is not the Gonzaga news. They were joining, but maybe that hasn't happened yet. And then the Air Force staying news. What's your initial reaction to all that's going on today with conference realignment, Sean?
Well, first off, I would like to apologize to you and to everybody watching for the network issues I've been kind of having over here. I am now doing this off my phone, but I don't know how much you covered in terms of the AAC and all that. It certainly, from everything that I had read, in terms of what people were putting out in Memphis, some of the reporters out there like Jason Munz with the commercial appeal. Some people, some people down in South Florida, and then some people down New Orleans with Tulane and all that. And this is something that we talked about too. There was always questions of how much of a better situation was it going to be for any of those schools, particularly Memphis. I think Memphis had the most interesting kind of role in all this. How much better of a situation joining the Pac-12 would actually be, and I can't say I'm totally shocked that they turned down the Pac-12. UTSA also made a commitment to the AAC as well. I did think that was a little more interesting in some ways, but I don't know. I can't say I'm all that shocked or surprised that this is the way it happened, but obviously it is a big domino in particular. You touched on it right as I was kind of just coming back in. Air Force staying is big for the Mountain West. That is that's a pretty big deal as well. I don't have a great read on the Gonzaga situation. I think that's definitely more your wheelhouse, to be honest with you. But at the same time, if that does happen, that's really interesting. But we'll kind of see if that does get confirmed, because McMurphy put out that report, and just about everybody kind of rushed to the forefront to say, yeah, it's actually not done. Nothing is in place there. So
I think so let's talk about the Gonzaga situation just to sort of hyper focus in on one piece of all this, right? The Gonzaga piece is this: they've already strong armed their way into the West Coast Conference to have a greater share in the revenue distribution. Frankly, as most people probably would say, as they should. They get all the NCAA tournament bids basically, and unit shares is what they're called. So when it's revenue sharing from the NCAA tournament, remember there's no football in the West Coast Conference, so a lot of the NCAA money comes from the fact that Gonzaga is really good in basketball. So why shouldn't they get more of it? They do get more of it. They actually restructured their entire scheduling format, whereas the Mountain West is, to the dismay and frustration of San Diego State, going to a 20-game schedule this year. Gonzaga was able to basically get some of the lower teams that were hurting their RPI when all this kind of started, and the net rankings, to not have to play them twice. It was hurting them to play their league schedule, right? They already formatted the West Coast Conference tournament to advance the regular season champ is basically as far as you can go. I believe the West Coast Conference advances them to the semifinals, and the bracket isn't a balanced bracket where everybody plays from quarterfinals on. I believe the top two seeds advance to the semifinals, and it is what it is. Gonzaga said we don't want to hurt ourselves by playing a low-level West Coast Conference team in the quarterfinals of the West Coast Conference tournament. So just at least, put us in the championship game. The compromise, I guess, was semifinals. The WAC has done the same. New Mexico State in the WAC for years kind of saw where they start at a further point down the bracket than the rest of the teams when New Mexico State was, one seed or whatever. So this happens in some leagues, and Gonzaga's already getting that. They're getting a little more piece of the pie in the West Coast Conference, and they got their demands met in terms of the scheduling. The Mountain West made a run at Gonzaga. They wanted a full share from the Mountain West a few years back, despite not having football, and that didn't come to fruition, mainly because a lot of university presidents understand that a full share for a football team, in the current existence of the media rights deal for the Mountain West, you're getting between $5 and $6 million. Every school's getting that for a full share, meaning you're a full member, football included. Hawaii is a football only member. I'm not sure what their share is off the top of my head, but it's not a full share, but it's, they get some. Gonzaga wanted that full share without having a football program. And when you take that to market, meaning when you take that to present to get a new media rights deal with CBS Sports, Fox Sports, ESPN, whatever, as attractive as a basketball league as the Mountain West is, and even if they were going to add Gonzaga, the numbers didn't play out to the university president's satisfaction that a team without football was really adding the value to that media rights deal, because all the media rights people really care about is football inventory in the fall. They know that if they put a basketball game on during the winter, they will get this many eyes on it, no matter who's playing. If a Gonzaga or a really good team is, that might bump up a little bit, but it's not as valuable in their mind, in a TV network's mind, as just having more football inventory. That's why a full share of football money, if Gonzaga can get that out of the Pac-12, if the Pac-12 is desperate enough to give them a full share without a football program, it's going to be a heck of a basketball program, and it will be a good get for the Pac-12, but they'll still have to add 2 football members, and they will then be splitting all that money, whatever money they do end up getting, with at least one member that doesn't even have to field the football team. So they get to focus all the money they get into their basketball program. That wasn't what the Mountain West presidents wanted. I'll bet they would now. I'll bet the Mountain West presidents would love to have Gonzaga now, just because it would probably help solidify and stabilize the conference, but that's not what they got. So that's the Gonzaga piece of all this. I still think they may end up in the Pac-12, but the reality is all the reports out there right now, as I'm looking through, some of these national reporters updates, is that it has not been confirmed. And that's what you have to think about with Gonzaga. It's not just about adding to your basketball program, or your basketball league and profile. That's great. The TV networks aren't paying for great basketball that much anymore, though. They are only paying for football, and the Mountain West knows that.
Yeah, and no, I think you summed that up about as well as literally any of us possibly could in that spot. And yeah, towards the end, right when I came back in, obviously you were talking about what does the kind of Pac-12 do at this point in terms of getting the 7th and 8th members to be considered and to get that FBS conference designation. UNLV and Utah State are kind of the two names with the most heat around them at this point. And I think I'm very curious to see what happens there. Utah State is really interesting to me too. That's kind of overall Utah as a state, I believe, is growing in population. We're treating I believe you're going to treat Logan as a gateway to the Salt Lake market in that sense too. So I don't know. I think they're pretty intriguing there too, and they've shown a decent level of investment, I should say, into the football program recently. So yeah,
I would definitely repeat everything you just said, or echo everything you just said. The reason Utah State is attractive is it has shown some investment and some willingness to invest, and they do want that Utah market. It is interesting to me, though, that at this point, there've been 2 waves right now. The first wave was to get by the Pac-12. The first wave was to get the Mountain West 4 to defect, if you will, and that got the buyout money that the Mountain West is going to receive by all that, reportedly around $111 million, something like that. And the Mountain West has been clear that why would they negotiate, as the Pac-12 likes to float out there, and has floated out there to several reporters. Why would they want to negotiate that? Why would the Mountain West be willing to negotiate that figure down? That they're not. With that money, the Mountain West is going to now, according to reports, throw some money at its existing members, and it sounds like maybe Air Force did bite, and it did take some of this money, and so wants to sign a grant of rights agreement that'll stabilize the Mountain West a little bit. And if UNLV and Utah State decide to do so, at the end of the day, a Pac-12 will still be a better conference, but it doesn't sound like the money for the TV deal is going to be significantly better. They will still very much be a Group of 5 league. They're not getting back into the CFP. Nobody that I have seen reporting on this has suggested otherwise. When the leader in the clubhouse or in the leader in the conference football team is a Boise State, and then you're dropping off down to I guess a Washington State and San Diego State and Oregon State. You're not getting the same treatment as the power conferences. You just aren't. And the group, it'll be a group of 5 league, and the Mountain West will be a little bit lesser group of 5 league as it currently stands. Even if they get UNLV and Utah State, there's still going to be 2 group of 5 leagues. So that's where we're at now. UNLV is still the key, I think, in all of this. If UNLV decides to go to the Pac-12, then Utah State may decide to follow suit, only because that lessens a little more the Mountain West, right? And as I've said on this show a lot, the UNM, again, Lobo fans, don't hold your breath. UNM has not put itself in a good position. When I say UNM hasn't, it comes down to the investment. A decade of having their finances so heavily scrutinized, and some financial mishaps along the way. I say mishaps. I had 2 felony trials. Both of them were acquitted. Found not guilty. 2 athletic department members who were charged with felonies were found not guilty, but that lingered for a long time, and state lawmakers didn't like the looks of finances at UNM. Plus, you weren't investing in facilities at a high enough level for such a long period that UNM's not getting an invite to this Pac-12 at this point. Maybe a next wave could get there, but it's not there now. And as it stands now, if UNLV goes, I think that's the linchpin that everybody needs to kind of look for.
Yeah. Do we know you mentioned the grant of rights. Do we know the timeline or the length for the specific Mountain West grant of rights yet? Because that's kind of the big detail for me at this point.
I believe it'll be, I think it's through, sure. I would imagine. I mean, I don't know what the point is if you're going, see, grant of rights may not, and this is what was reported, grant of rights, but that, I don't know if that's even the accurate term, because the media rights deal in the Mountain West comes up next year, right? Basically at the end of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're sending some money to the schools that are still in the league right now to stabilize it. If that grant of rights or whatever the agreement is goes beyond that media deal, the schools aren't doing themselves any favors by accepting a grant of rights or signing a grant of rights and locking themselves into a league when you don't know what the next media contract's going to be. So I don't know the term, and you're right. That's a key point to all of this.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's really, obviously we're all looking at UNLV at this point, right? Like we're trying to figure out what happens there. But that's the big sticking point for me, from my perspective at this point, to be honest with you. Craig Johnson commented, said $250 million to UNM and NMSU each, get those stadiums handled. Geoff, what do you think is the likelihood of that happening at this moment in time?
250 each, I think won't happen. I think there is a scenario where a significant amount of money can go to the 2 FBS programs this legislative session because of all this. It might be, I shouldn't say it might be, it probably is too little too late. They didn't get the invite to the initial wave of the Pac-12 expansion or rebuilding of the Pac-12. And lawmakers have sort of been sitting back and sort of taking their shots at UNM and NMSU athletic departments when it fit them. Again, I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again. There's the current governor campaigned, among other things, obviously, but at least in part on, I'm going to get Lobo soccer back, and they certainly loved calling press conferences when UNM's athletics finances were in trouble, and there were cameras at a lot of Board of Regents meetings when they said our finances are so bad we got to cut sports, and good luck. A lot of lawmakers said they were going to do some things for UNM athletics, and then never did, frankly. That's still the case. UNM state lawmakers had a chance to help both FBS programs be in a better position during this current wave of conference realignment. And I say current wave, not just this one going on now, I mean in the past few years as well. And they didn't. Both football stadiums in Las Cruces and in Albuquerque could have been improved, and it's not going to happen. So at least not anytime soon. If it does happen this legislative session, Let me throw out a number that's not going to happen, but if each school got $100 million this legislative session to just focus on huge upgrades to their existing fields or stadiums, even that might be just too little too late, frankly. Remember, Canvas Stadium in Colorado, Colorado State in Fort Collins, $220 million stadium. Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego is a $320 million stadium. The investment needed and the neglect of investment for years of UNM and NMSU football isn't just on those programs for not being very good traditionally. I know the past 2 years, Lobo or New Mexico State football has been good, and previously under Davey, Lobo football had a couple bowl games as well just in the past decade. But lawmakers have not invested at any rate that is going to put New Mexico and its two big schools in position to be in a good spot here, no matter how good basketball is. That said, basketball's been pretty good through the years with football not being good, and it'll remain so. Lobo basketball will remain Lobo basketball, but it's all the other sports I think that are really going to suffer because of this.
If you were speaking to we're way too deep in this. We have probably a different perspective than a lot of fans in all that sense. If you were speaking to a New Mexico fan that maybe is kind of thinking about being left out of this wave of realignment in terms of the Pac-12 and, not being a part of that brand name and being in the Mountain West that is more stable. But to this point, until, we figure out, what they're going to add and if they are going to add and how that plays out, what would you say to that New Mexico fan in particular? Just how should they feel?
How should UNM fans feel right now about not getting into the Pac-12?
But also in the sense too that the Mountain West for right now is apparently, this could change by the end of the day, right? But
yeah. I keep looking right. I have the stream going right here, so it could change in the next 10 minutes.
Exactly, right? Like it's supposed to be stable, but we don't. Let's just go with that right now. Like it's supposed to be a stable Mountain West that should add pieces. How should they feel with those two realities in place?
So here's what the Mountain West does next, right? Let's assume for sake of this conversation that nobody else leaves the Mountain West. Football playing members they'd still be okay, right? They'd be at 8. Hawaii being a football only. They wouldn't have to expand per se to continue being a football league, but they would have to add in terms of some baseball, like to continue baseball. They're going to have to add. Right now, Washington State is on the 2-year scheduling agreement to play in the Mountain West the next 2 years in baseball. But when you're losing Washington State and you're losing San Diego State and you're losing Fresno State, 3 baseball members, you are now below the NCAA required 6 to be a sport in the league. Again, FBS football, you need 8. For every other sport, you need at least 6 to be recognized by the NCAA. And the Mountain West would have to add at least a baseball only team if they can, or add a full member that includes baseball. I think that's noteworthy when it comes to the New Mexico State and UTEP conversation. When I had a phone call, it was a little after 1, so about a little over an hour ago, I had a phone call conversation with somebody asking me about, is UNM going to block NMSU like they've done in the past? I will tell you this with 100% sincerity. Aggie fans don't like hearing this. New Mexico has not blocked New Mexico State from joining the Mountain West, no matter how much you want to believe it so. And the reason that is the Mountain West has never considered New Mexico State to this point. They might now, but there was never a block to an invitation that wasn't being considered. At this point, if the UTEP New Mexico State additions are considered in any way, there are some people that think New Mexico would try and block New Mexico State, and I understand that, except for the baseball front. The baseball part of all this is interesting. UTEP does not have a baseball team. You need to add a member that has a baseball team, and New Mexico State does and has more recent success in football, although they're hurting this week, and I will throw this up there. And we are going to get to Lobo football here shortly, but I did, in fact, predict that New Mexico State was going to open as a betting favorite because they're playing at home against an 0-4 Lobo team this week. And boy, was I wrong. That doesn't mean that's what I was predicting. As the outcome of the game, it's what I was predicting the line to open up as. But anyway, I was wrong. It has happened at least 2 or 3 times ever.
I will also add that I was also wrong. I specifically said on the Saturday night live stream when we really got rolling in the final 20 minutes of that show that I believe the quote was, "I don't think they'll be picked as 10-point favorites." And lo and behold, they open. New Mexico opens as 10-point favorites. So we were both wonderfully wrong. Best analysis in the business, and this is why you should keep tuning in for more comedy like that.
Absolutely. We'll give you your money back when we're wrong like that. The line right now for those scoring at home, I'm looking at MGM has a line of 8.5. New Mexico is
it's going
8.5 at New Mexico State. I see some other lines back up to 9. It was at 7 at one point today. We're kind of bouncing around. I think the odds makers right now are just trying to settle in on what they think the line should be. I can't imagine there's been so much action that there's been movement today so far. I don't think they know what to do with this so far.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I mean, is this a true extra game in terms of betting? I don't know for sure. Like Montana State, New Mexico, that was an extra game, right? It was weird with all the line swings and everything kind of happening there because you think about, I keep going back to the boys of the Westgate Superbook. I mean, like those guys didn't even have that thing listed during the week when we were all talking about the odds and all that. But yeah, I don't know if New Mexico is a true 10-point favorite over New Mexico State at this point. I do sternly believe that they are a favorite, but I would not be shocked to see that go down and probably settle around, kind of maybe 6 points or less. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I would be surprised if this ends up at kickoff being more than a touchdown point spread.
Yeah,
I don't think you see an 0-4 football team that has gotten beaten by double digits in 3 of their 4 losses and has lost to one team 2 years in a row, or the past 2 times they played. So you got the history front, you got all that stuff, go on the road and then be favored by more than a touchdown. But man, there's a lot that goes into that includes New Mexico State lost so much from last year's team, and they have looked so bad. Even 31-11 against Sam Houston. I'm telling you, man, like that last touchdown was late in the game. It was never in doubt. And New Mexico State has looked pretty bad. And man, if there's ever a get right game for the Aggies, this is it.
I was just giggling a second there, and that's not at any of the New Mexico State misfortune. One, I want to add, like, I do think this is kind of in terms of like a winless team being in this spot, like it does kind of remind me of like Sam Houston State last year and some of the lines that they ended up having, throughout the year. Cause I think they started 0-8, 0-7, something like that. And they were still, it's an interesting kind of spreads floating around them too. But I giggling, Geoff, like, I mean, you were the guy on Saturday that said like, well, they were in the conference championship last year. Like they got.
Oh yeah, I was talking them up.
That's why they're going to be favored. Like
I was giving you every reason to think why this opening line was going to be New Mexico State by 2 or 3, and then maybe be bet the other way by kickoff. Lobo's favored by 2 or 3 by next Saturday or by Saturday, and I was way off. So
yeah,
there is a comment here from the fake Matt Mummy.
You have experience with the real Matt Mummy, correct?
I do.
Yes.
I've covered Hal and Matt Mummy at New Mexico State. Unfortunately, and man, was this a miserable year to be around. But man, I covered an 0-12 Hal Mummy season when I was a sports editor of the Sun News in Las Cruces, and it was rough, man. It wore on a lot of people, including myself. As I guess I was probably about 26 at the time. So man, was I a few gray hairs ago. But yeah, fake Matt Mummy. What does all this mean for Mountain West football schedule? And will Nevada get to play the Lobos in Albuquerque for the first time since 2016? You are a football guy. Do you think at this point we know anything enough to kind of comment on what this means for the upcoming schedule? This has to play out for 2 more years, or I guess next season would be the 25 season, and July 1st of 2026 is when the defecting teams would be transferring over to the Pac-12. So it would just be this year and next year for football. When do we get to see Nevada back in Albuquerque? We have any idea, or just way too early?
I have absolutely zero idea, Geoff. I'm trying to figure out a way to plug in my phone while keeping the stream going, actually. No, I have no clue at this point. Definitely something that we're going to be looking at going forward. And Matt, fake Matt, I will keep an eye out for something on that front in terms of Nevada getting back to Albuquerque. I didn't know that it was that long. 2016 feels like that's a really long period of time to not go to Albuquerque in this kind of league structure. So, whoa, Craig Johnson. When will the hair plugs be healed up enough to lose the hat? Geoff, I can probably help you on the hair front if you need a couple. Geoff, I think you're muted.
I might have been muted.
Yeah, you were muted. You just
I definitely don't have the hair plugs going. I have hat hair and bed hair, and when I'm doing these things, I've basically been in an off-season mode that I have not gotten out of yet. Basically, if I don't have to do my hair that day, I don't do my hair. I will say that changes, and I'm going to make a comment from earlier available real quick, because first day of practice, it is first day of basketball practice today. Tomorrow will be the first day I am heading out to practice, and there will be some availability for media tomorrow for Lobo men's basketball practice. And you will see some videos of some coaches and players talking and starting to have some feedback on what I see in this year's team and all that good stuff, and how these Lobos are going to be. I wrote about it over the summer a couple times, obviously, but the first official day of practice is today for the Lobos, and I will be out there and may even comb my hair. I don't know. If not, we will certainly be going back to the hat, Craig. So that is the little tangent to Lobo basketball. I will say they got two big pickups last week. Lobo men's basketball signed two short guards in combo guards. Isaac Williamson was the first one from Eastvale, California, and then Jalen Petty, a 4-star from Seattle, which was a really, really big get for the Lobos, both of them. So, all right, let's talk a little Lobo Aggie football. Get back to that real quick. Bronco Mendenhall had his press conference today, Sean. What did he say that stood out? Anything in particular? Do you want me to play that video you posted, or did that not work?
Yeah, you know what? I'll kind of repeat myself because I don't know how good I was coming across in the stream earlier. You asked Bronco kind of what are your memories of being in the New Mexico State rivalry? In the years that you had before, from 1998 to 2002. I think they 2-3 or 3 and something like that. I don't know the overall record off the top of my head, but and he kind of just did not answer anything in regards to that. It was more, we're just focused on rectifying the situation that we have, and kind of said the thing that he says basically every week, where he's like, I really like my team. I think we're really competitive. I really like the will I'm seeing, but there's just too many mistakes that kind of need to be cleaned up at this point. Rick Wright, our esteemed colleague at the Journal, one of the best columnists for my money just about anywhere, asked a great question, kind of putting Bronco in a spot where he had to not compare, but maybe put it in perspective. Preparing for New Mexico State in this rivalry compared to when he was the head coach at BYU, and you had to deal with the Holy War every single year. And it got a really, really, really interesting answer out of him in terms of the Holy War, and just how that week he would have to basically sit down with his family and kind of come up with a plan, more or less, for if somebody says this to you about this is what you're going to say back to them. Frankly, I mean, just kind of put plans in place for people to be protected and all that, because he said when you're in that rivalry and you played that key role there, you have to go outside and leave your house with basically a helmet on. I mean, chin strap fully buckled. NMSU is heated. It's not quite that, at least in the football front and everything too. Also, one interesting detail that I want to get more information on. I don't know how we're going to get this information quite yet, but we've talked a little bit on the show about running back Andrew Henry. Has not seen a carry this season. He only logged offensive snaps against Auburn, and they were very quiet offensive snaps. I think it was just 3, kind of towards the end of the game when Auburn had it in hand. It's not as if UNM has really needed him in the same way that UNM probably needed I don't know, needed. Actually, no, didn't really. Never mind. I'll get rid of that comparison. But yeah, it's just been kind of an interesting an interesting absence so far. Mendenhall did say today that he's dealing with an eligibility issue, and it sounds like it's something with the NCAA. It doesn't quite sound like it's a grade thing. That's kind of what Mendenhall indicated today. So I thought that was probably one of the more newsworthy items that came out today. But in terms of talking about NMSU, I mean, Mendenhall made a point. We could probably play the video here in a second to say that he thinks that they're well coached and the results haven't gone their way early. But, you know, I thought one of the funnier things that he said today was that every week you're kind of looking at the tape of your upcoming opponent, and you're hoping to see another team that doesn't quite know what they're doing. And he made it clear that New Mexico State clearly knows what they're doing. So they're absolutely going to be a challenge in terms of preparing for that, in terms of offense and defense, even though the offense obviously has not looked great to start.
I'm going to pull up this video that you posted earlier on X. It is Bronco. Why don't you set this up while I pull it up? It is a little bit of what you were already talking about, obviously, but this is basically what NMSU talk, right?
Yeah, a pretty simple question. I mean, just basically the very basic, hey, I mean, this is what's been going on with them, and what are you seeing out of them? I've made this point before to mention Mendenhall really probably talks about opponents and, you know, what they bring to the table far less than any other coach I've ever covered, whether it's football or basketball. He really does not, I mean, get into, you know, some coaches you'll ask them, you know, hey, what do you think about FIU? And they'll say, oh, man, they got a great tight end, this guy, and, you know, love what they do in the passing game and everything. That is not quite what Mendenhall does. You have to, I don't want to say press, but you got to, you know, kind of force the issue to a certain degree. And this is kind of the general response that he gave me when I asked him about NMSU.
They're well coached, and each team and each place has kind of a different identity and a different rhythm. And so, as you just mentioned, and what they're probably self-assessing is they're probably saying their defense is a little ahead of their offense. Their offense is capable, well coached, the scheme is good, the design is good. I mean, every week in college football, whenever you put on the tape, you're always hoping for, and they don't know what they're doing. It's always the opposite. Here's the next guys that know what they're doing, and maximizing resources, which they are. And so I see a well-coached team, and they've had some challenges in terms of result, but I don't see it in terms of execution or design or plan or talent. Again, to your point, they're probably self-assessing, saying their defense has probably been slightly ahead of where their offense is in terms of results. It's not because of strategy and coaching.
And then I think you kind of touched on this a little bit today too. I mean, do you use the fact that UNM is on a 2-game losing streak to NMSU as a kind of a motivation point, or is it not even in the picture?
For me, it's not even in the picture. I'm sure our players know already. I'm sure folks have told them. It's not on my radar. And it's not going to make us or me try any harder. That's not possible. It's just this opponent, this game, this setting, this challenge at this time to try to help my current team have success. And I have no other energy left after that.
All right, Sean, any follow-up there?
Yeah, I mean,
quiet audio, but any follow-up there?
Yeah, I kind of blanked on my follow-up there too. That was something I was curious about as well. I think you do see a lot of like first-year coaches a lot of the time really kind of make a point to embrace that rivalry and all that. Like I remember like Jim Tressel at Ohio State, you know, like that introductory press conference was very heavy on, you know, we got to beat that team up north and everything like that. And I think you see a lot of coaches do that. And that just hasn't been Mendenhall's style to this point. It's clear that he cares about the rivalry, but he doesn't treat the rivalry as this kind of outsized entity that overpowers, you know, the goal at hand that he kind of has and has spoken about at length in terms of, you know, building a consistent and winning program and developing people throughout. So maybe not a wholeheartedly unique approach, probably the healthiest approach, if we're being honest, towards any college rivalry. but that is certainly the approach that they have adopted at New Mexico under him.
All right, how about this here? Any predictions? I'm not going to give you my final predictions right now, but I think UNM should be favored for a reason. I think they've played better through the first month of the season than New Mexico State. That's certainly an obvious lean towards I think New Mexico is probably going to win. But I'm not convinced yet, man. I'm telling you, the first disappointment I had in watching this Lobo team was Saturday, and I'll have to. Well, let me back up. The first disappointment I had in watching Lobo football was Saturday, but what they did against Fresno State versus what New Mexico State did against Fresno State a week prior when they lost 48-0 is night and day. Fresno State is clearly better than both of them, but man, New Mexico State has some issues to go through with quarterback, and those don't change just because it's a rivalry, right? Like their struggles versus other teams don't just go away because we can play up this week. It's New Mexico. Like those still exist. It's not just emotion that can override all that stuff. So we'll I guess we'll see Saturday, but I'm certainly leaning towards New Mexico's going to win. I don't know if they're going to win by a touchdown though. In fact, I think they're going to win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I will save my my score prediction for the kind of 3 keys in a prediction story that I write just about every week, that I do write every single week heading into the game and all that. I think I'm generally with you in terms of I think New Mexico is favored. Should be favored. They obviously are favored. And I think they have the edge. I don't know. I'm really curious to see this Jason Beck, Joe Morris coordinator showdown. That I mean, that's not to discount Tyler Wright or Nick Howell or anything like that. That very much feels strength on strength in a really interesting way. I think, I know it has been pretty for New Mexico State. I do think they do have a lot of good things going with their defense as is right now. The offense is obviously a little bit rudderless right now, but we'll see if they can kind of find their footing throughout this week. It's clear that Santino Marucci is going to be the starting quarterback going forward. Tony Sanchez confirmed that today. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it is a matter where, he had that kind of the nerves and all that in that first game against San Diego State last week, and he's able to put out a more consistent and cleaner performance against New Mexico. I wrote in a notebook yesterday that there were certain aspects that New Mexico improved in actually defensively against Fresno State. They actually gave up a season low number of big plays. They really didn't get beat with a whole lot of big plays. If anything, I mean, you can pin a lot of that game on the 4 turnovers, the 3 ball turnovers with the 2 Devin Dampier picks and the Eli Sanders fumble on that first drive, and then the turnover on downs at their own 12-yard line. You don't get that 4th and 1, you give Fresno State a short field, and then that kind of ends the game for you. The defense definitely didn't stop Fresno State as much as New Mexico was certainly hoping, but kind of trending in the right direction, you want to say, but I don't know. You really got to keep seeing it at this point. So I'm very, I don't know. I mean, usually by this time of the week, I don't have a great read on what I think is going to happen in the game. So need a little bit more time to think on that one.
So I'll say this. I think another big piece of that game Saturday was the turnovers. Or not the turnovers, the penalty.
Yeah.
And if Bronco's embarrassed by the penalties and frustrated by the penalties, something tells me this week there will be far fewer penalties. If you're not going to give away 100+ yards on penalties, I think UNM's probably look. If UNM cannot give away the ball 3 times and have over 100 yards of penalties, they're in a really good position to win this game.
Yeah, and I'm going to post this later on Twitter, this response in full, because I thought it was really interesting. He even said, after the Auburn game, it wasn't like, and this is similar to something that I kind of wrote yesterday in terms of talking about the penalties. After the Auburn game, he said that he kind of felt like you're not going to write off 16 penalties. Like, that's a lot of penalties, 122 yards. That's a ton. You really can't have that. That's not something that has happened in his career. I was going through box scores back to 2008 last night, trying to find another game where they had 16 penalties under Bronco Mendenhall, and that hasn't happened. But at the same time, he's well, I thought that to a certain degree, I mean, like you're thinking about it, like maybe the penalties were, kind of just coming from the sense that they're playing in Jordan Hare, you're playing in the torrential downpour, and you're, you had weird travel arrangements too. You got into Montgomery way later than you thought you were going to. So the team's, not as well rested as they probably would like. And seems like a lot of situational stuff. And now it's kind of a point where it happened on a clear night at home when you have the home crowd behind you, and you have to figure out a way to get that process right. So I don't know. I'll post that full response. I think I'm generally with you too. I don't think you're going to see a ton of penalties this week, but at the same time, you get flagged 16, 17 times, 33 penalties, back-to-back weeks. You're really in a prove-it spot. I'm not going to believe that you're probably going to have less than like 7 penalties in the game after that. So
mess is a fair word after those 16 and then 17 penalties. But Craig, who is on chiming in with all these comments on YouTube, is a little critical. If you're saying, if you're referring to anything beyond the penalties, I wouldn't say it's a mess under Bronco right now. I would say the penalties have been a mess, but so far through 4 games, 0-4 is not what many people would have predicted anything other than. There are a lot of people that expected UNM to be 0-4 here, and probably a lot of those same people didn't expect them to be competitive into the second half against 2 of those teams, at Auburn, at Arizona, and didn't expect to have a lead against that FBS national title contender, Montana State, until 10 seconds ago in the game. So I would say so far, I wouldn't say it's a mess under Bronco in general, the big picture, but the penalties certainly for back-to-back weeks certainly are.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the live show we did after Montana State, where I think you asked me about the penalties, and we talked about it a little bit, and it's like it's just one game, right? I mean, I think they got flagged like 3, maybe 4 times in that game, and that was a lower number than what we saw last year, where UNM was one of the most penalized teams in the country. I think it was like them in Colorado.
Yeah.
But it's, how much slack can you give them for one game? You got to see it kind of going forward. And now we're in a spot where, it's it definitely is. It is a problem. And Mendenhall even noted today, he's like, we've done statistical studies and we've seen it before where like, sometimes 9 penalties, 10 penalties, like that doesn't quite adversely affect your chances to win in the way that you might the way that you might expect, right? Like they're not good. You got to clean them up, but depending on the situation, depending on where they're coming from, sometimes they're not going to sink you. There's something that you have to take care of, but it's not always the end of the world. And but he did make it clear. I mean, 16, 17, that's way too high, and that definitely affects your chances to win at a pretty adverse rate.
Like a lot of things, context is needed for those penalties, right? If it's a penalty, if it's a bad, stupid penalty that didn't have to happen and it extends a drive or ends a drive, like those are worse penalties than a 5-yarder that didn't really extend a 3rd down drive that would have been a punt otherwise and stuff like that. There are some stats that show the worst penalty to an offense, obviously, is a holding penalty kills such a high percentage of drives. There a 10-yard penalty on 1st or 2nd down, going from like 2nd and 4 to 2nd and 14, kills so many drives. So even just as simple and as common a penalty as holding is, the stats on how many drives end up with a punt that had a holding penalty are so huge. So anyway, those pre-snap penalties are the ones that I think are frustrating Bronco.
Yeah, and I think the holding is frustrating him too, in the sense that you just touched on that as well. I think it was 3 offensive holding, I should say, against Fresno State. And UNM got flagged, I think, 14 times on the offensive side of the ball against Auburn. It was mostly offensive penalties in that regard. I don't think any penalty hurt them in that game as much as the Richard Pierce holding that wiped the Nick Trujillo TD off the board when they're kind of fighting and scraping to get something going against Fresno State towards the end of that game. And he even admitted it on Mendenhall even admitted it on Saturday night. Like it's definitely frustrating. Like it's not good to see.
It's worth noting too with the quarterback that extends plays as often and as well as Devin Dampier does. and maybe rolling out right, the pocket may be flowing right, and then he cuts back left because he's extending the play himself. You're gonna have probably more holds than the average team when you have a quarterback as good as at that as Devin can be, and player illegal man downfield kind of stuff too. When they think he's running, when offensive linemen think he's running, but he actually does a really good job. If you want to say it's a good job, he stays in the pocket until the very end, and he will throw right at the line of scrimmage if he sees somebody open. So he is. You're going to see a lot more illegal man downfields when you have a quarterback like that, and a lot more holdings, just because they don't know what the quarterback's doing behind them. Sometimes the offensive lineman. That said, a lot of the penalties could have been and should have been avoided.
Yeah, for sure. And I said this on Saturday. As a reporter and a beat writer, you kind of hate talking about penalties because it's just. It's not much analysis to it in the sense that you really can't do much more than what we've been doing over the last 5 minutes or so, just kind of chatting it up. And they're not terribly fun questions to ask. But yeah, that is kind of the spot that UNM is in at the moment. I think there's another question I kind of wanted to get to.
Which one was
that? Craig Johnson, do either of you think Bronco will get to 500 and when? I think this is an interesting question, right? Because UNM is 0-4. And that's not an ideal spot to get to 500. It's not an ideal spot to go win a game, to go to a bowl game at this rate. You're looking at at worst, a 6-2 finish to make a bowl game. But I don't know. I kind of got flack for posting it on Twitter yesterday. The previous 0-4 starts and how they've kind of played out in terms of New Mexico history. I don't know. I think with New Mexico State coming up, a not that great Air Force team that is staying in the conference, and a kind of a sketch Colorado State team on the road, also sketch Utah State team on the road. I mean, the schedule is clearly lightening a bit. I don't think they get to 500 this year. I don't think it happens. I don't think this team is won enough and won together enough to really be in that position where I can say comfortably that they're going to make a kind of second half rally. But at the same time, I think it is kind of oddly in play for the start that they've had.
Yeah, I don't think they get to 500 this year either. But if you're ranking the wins on the season, their next 5 are 5 of the 6 most winnable games on this schedule going into the season. I think New Mexico State, Air Force, Utah State, Colorado State, and Wyoming. This is not me predicting them winning the majority of those games even, but like if you look at how those teams are performing, other than Hawaii, which is at the end of the schedule, I think that's if you're breaking down a 12-game schedule into 6 winnable games and 6 not winnable games, like 5 of the 6 winnable games are the next 5 for the Lobos. The time is now. Does that make Saturday more important? Does that make Saturday a must win? It depends on how you want to define must win. It's such a stupid phrase that we always use in sports, and I'm going to use it anyway. Criticize it and use it at the same time. But I will say this: if they don't beat New Mexico State on Saturday, they will lose Lobo fans for the season. An 0-4 start extending to 0-5, including a loss to a bad New Mexico State team. You will lose the Lobo fan base for the season. It's hard to argue that you've had the Lobo fan base yet anyway, because 17,000 and 18,000 have been the 2 attendance numbers. But you win the New Mexico State game, and then maybe you start seeing some fans show up. You get on a little bit of a roll in this moment of the schedule where you actually do have some winnable games, and who knows. So must win is you can debate it. It's not a must win for this program's trajectory. Broncos turnaround of this program is going to be a couple year process at least. So it's not really a must win in the big picture, but I think for the more focused on this season, man, you better win Saturday if you're the Lobos. I think there's more pressure on the Lobos to win this game than there is on the Aggies, even at home. Only because, well, I don't know. I guess you could argue that either way, but I think the Aggies at least have some real serious questions on offense and some reasons to point to and say, look, this is why we're bad. This is why we can't win right now. We have some quarterback issues. We've had some injuries. We had so many defections. There's reasons for it. there's no reason at this point for the Lobos not to start winning a couple of these games if you want us to believe that they are a better program.
Yeah, and I don't know if you lose the entire fan base for the season if you lose this game. I think that's relative to expectations that people had, and how much they're kind of into the product that they're seeing and how much they're into what Bronco has said. But yeah, obviously a crucial game, and you do look at the schedule, and really at this point, it's kind of like I don't think that they'll be non-competitive when Washington State comes to town, but it does feel like Washington State to this point, the team that how I've seen them play to this point, I would probably give them the clearest lean over New Mexico, over any of the opponents remain on the schedule. And by the way, a quick one, I'm an AP poll voter. That Washington State is not ranked this week. I want to say that's disappointing, and I want to say that I don't know how that happened. I do know how that happened. A lot of teams in the middle of the top 25, 11 through 18 and all that, they ended up losing and had to drop back or fall out of the poll. And I think a lot of people, a lot of my fellow voters, not to call them out, instead of looking at Washington State and all that, decided to just grab the nearest and sexiest G5 team they could find and ranked a Boise State team that is not undefeated like Washington State, does not have the strength of schedule to this point like Washington State, and beat up on a Portland State team that had to cancel the game the week before because of whooping cough. They whooped the whooping cough team. That's asinine to me. I totally don't understand it. In this game this weekend, Washington State and Boise State, Washington State should be the ranked team to this point. I had to do that. That's been bugging me a lot lately.
I appreciate your hot take, your emotion and empathy for Washington State, but I watched Friday night's Washington State game against San Jose State, the preseason number 10 in the Mountain West, and they rushed the field playing one of the ugliest fourth quarter / 2 overtime periods ever. It was disgusting to watch and beautiful all at the same time, and that alone would keep them off of any ballot I had for football, which I don't.
Yeah, but they got the win. They got the win, and I think San Jose State at this point is a better. I think they're a better team than the Boise fans are really gonna love me for this. I think San Jose State's a better team at this point than Georgia Southern, who Boise State gave up 45 points to as well, and needed a historic day from Ashton Genty to pull away from. So I don't know. Also Texas A&M being ranked. I don't see that either. Come on, but.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. I do want to say that I teased on Saturday some breaking food news that I know we're over an hour into this one, but I can't put it off anymore. Sean, for those that don't know, has never had a grape in his life. He's never had a blueberry in his life. He's never had what I think is kind of weird, but I understand it's more regional. He's never had hot fries, stuff like that. I'm finding all these things out that Sean is just a weird food eating guy who, after getting off of an 11 p.m. shift, sometimes has been known to go home and, in his words, whip up a batch of what, rigatoni and with vodka sauce. Is that what it was?
Yeah. I actually I meant to text you last week. I made rigatoni and vodka sauce. Yeah, it was really good. I got to make it for you at some point, dude. I got to bring it into the office. It's good. It's my sister's
last
recipe.
week. Sean Reider, for the first time in his life, tried Greek yogurt. Now, This was not on my radar that he had never had Greek yogurt, and I don't care. I don't care for Greek yogurt that much. But the fact that Sean is trying foods for the first time, see, our little Sean's growing up. What a big boy! He's trying foods before he says he doesn't like them.
Little 24-year-old Sean Reider, just
he may
venturing out into the world, given these.
May try a blueberry or grape eventually, but Sean Reider, you tried for the first time Greek yogurt. A, how was it? And B, what made you try Greek yogurt at the age of 24 for the first time?
Yeah, so I really last season I lost weight during the season. And I lost a considerable amount of weight. I dropped down to like 155, which is bad for me. That's
I don't have that.
I lost weight, and so this season has been a real focus for me to make sure you're eating 3 meals a day. and you're not eating complete junk in all 3 meals. And I don't know. I like to eat bacon and eggs in the morning. But some mornings you don't have time to make bacon and eggs. And I said, you know what? Greek yogurt, solid breakfast alternative. We'll give it a go. Get some granola, get some bananas, some peanut butter. It's been good. Had some this morning. Bitter, but I like the bitterness. Just plain Greek yogurt. And I think I'm sold. I'm in on it for right now. Whether or not we put other fruits in it, that remains to be seen. But it's doing the trick at the moment.
I was so taken aback by this news when you told me the other night. What was it? I guess it would have been Friday, because
Friday night, yeah.
I was helping on a desk shift for some Friday night high school football stuff. I was in the office helping out and had to walk from the sports department area into the newsroom to let everybody know, because I have let them know your peculiar tastes, or I guess avoidance of not only avoidance of grapes and blueberries, but it still boggles my mind that you've gone blueberry picking more than once and never popped a blueberry in your mouth. But anyway, I digress.
Yes.
I went out and told everybody that you tried the Greek yogurt, and man, was that newsroom so proud of Sean.
I know. I'm excited to come in tomorrow and be greeted as a hero among my peers. Really expecting kind of a great homecoming to the Journal offices.
Did you see Lucas, our sports editor, sent you an email today? CC'd me on it.
Yes, with an attachment for a Greek yogurt blueberry recipe. How much of a recipe is that really? You just put the blueberries in the Greek yogurt, right? Like,
I didn't have to read it to kind of have an idea of what the recipe might be.
So if you want the best local sports coverage in town and simple Greek yogurt recipes, go to the Journal website. We got you covered on both fronts. We'll take care of you there.
Sean, I appreciate it. I got some Lobo basketball starting up tomorrow, so I may do another one of these later this week, maybe a kind of a reader mailbag if I can get some of you guys to send some questions and stuff like that. For sure, though, what we know is next time you will see us here in this format will be Saturday after the New Mexico State football game, in a post-game show, probably within an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, I'd say. After that game, we will be talking the game, when we can, we'll start maybe even bringing in somebody else if they got if we can get another reporter in or something like that. Maybe the new guy down in Cruces, maybe we can get him in for a few minutes to come in. But anyway, Saturday night after the game, Sean, I appreciate you for being on. Thanks for being here.
Geoff, thank you, and thank you to everybody that listened today. Appreciate y'all.
Until next time, thanks for watching, guys.